Okay, wait. There we go. Okay, we're recording, so over to you, Brenda and Twyla.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to start off by, can everybody see the Welcome to Experience CaMS user session?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, it looks good, Brenda. Yep.
Alrighty. So I'm hoping what we can do today is get a better understanding of the CaMS big picture and adapt to the challenges, which we are having quite a few of. Increase your confidence in the data interpretation and management, and then the options for data management and processes that will help you better manage your workload. So I'm hoping that what we provide, Twyla and I chat about, is not necessarily what everyone else is doing. Every program has got something different, and hopefully we can do some sharing today, best practices, that type of thing. I'll try and remind everybody this is our processes, this is what we're doing, but for the most part, what we're going to be trying to do is look at the reports and see what your data from the reports and what you're putting into the system reflect on those reports. So the building blocks for the CaMS data, again, most of us are experienced users here. So the front end is your participation form, your milestone process, and your tracking. That incorporates the suitability factors, your progress, that type of thing. Then the next section is your exit process, your follow-ups, and that is basically your outcomes, where if your students are going off to post-secondary, whatever, and that you're wanting to make sure that whatever you're putting in there is going to be coming out on those reports, and you get your check marks from the system. And touch on referrals and tracking. I think that's important to be able to provide where our learners are going in and out of. So referrals in and referrals out. Okay, so creating your learners, the suitability factor is basically one of the items that some of them we don't have control over. So we've got, when we're putting in a learner, this is the person's information. You've got your grade 12. So these are the 10 suitability factors that come out on the report 64. And some of them are easier to get than others. So less than grade 12, Ontario, OW, no source of income, and Crown Ward. On report 64, that is actually one number. It's not, it's combined. We also have then the more 6 years. These are the targets that we have to have. So number 5 and 6 and 7, again, are easy to grab from the data from the PR, or the PR is the participation registration form, PRF, sorry. History of interrupted education, we've all struggled, or we've tried to wrap our heads around trying to describe that to the learner. It's not a defined, if you go into the data fields, it's not defined. It's just basically saying history of interrupted education. So I think most of us use that as if between kindergarten to grade 12, if you've ever had to step away for any length of time. And then the last 4 items, disabled, Indigenous, deaf, and Francophone, are the hardest ones to get, because that is the data that we're asking, that is, it is where the students can choose to do that. So there has been a couple of strategies that we've used here at Algonquin, and it's been more around the disabled section, and it's basically disabled. If you look at our PRF, that's the person with a disability. So we can chat a little bit more about how we've been able to identify, getting students to identify and put that suitability factor in there. Then next items is, and please, if you've got any questions or hands up, please, you can stop me. I'm going to yabber for a bit, but stop me if I'm going too fast, or if you'd like to touch base on something.
And I'm looking carefully at the chat, Brenda, so hopefully we can keep an eye on that.
Okay, So the next item that's in your entering of a student is entering your learner referrals, external and internal. What I wanted to sort of make a reminder is this information, when you are putting somebody into the system, try and use your internal supports through the college. So things like peer tutoring, the Center for Accessible Learning, that's our CAL services, employment services, health services. The biggest thing is to make sure that you're documenting that somewhere on the learner plan. But it doesn't have to be a formal referral if it's in-house. But it's really a wonderful way of getting a suitability, a referred out to put into the system. I missed my little, actually I had a little information on here about suitability factors for when you are entering, as a reminder, is when you're entering or looking at somebody new into your system and the student is already, the learner is already created in CaMS, is to take a look at the suitability factor. So that's your person. If for your PRF, they've indicated, you know, that they've got a disability, that they're francophone or whatever, you should be checking that in CaMS, attached to that person, because they might not have indicated that prior to another service provider. And you want to make sure that you go back and take a peek at that element of it. And Twyla, I can tell you're thinking, it's in the person's, okay, no, okay.
It's okay. I was sorry, I got interrupted for a second. It's okay.
Okay, no worries, sorry. So it's the,
But I
Emily.
see Amelia has her hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, Emily.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know. I keep pushing the button and it didn't do anything.
No worries.
I have a question about that because at SCT, like most of our customers, well, learners are francophone. So, but in that, even in the, with that being said, like the suitability factors, is it only one indicator? Because almost 100% of our learners are francophone, but still we're not always reaching the 30% that is required. So how many indicators do we need per learner in order to count, you know, to raise the suitability factor in general?
That's
because
a good question.
that doesn't make sense.
So we need 3, an average of 3 per student.
Okay, perfect.
And that's because the target value is 30% in the performance management framework. So if you're averaging 3 per student, you're going to hit that 30% minimum. So one person might have 5 indicators and another might have 1, but the average of those is 3. So
Okay, so it works as an average.
yeah.
Perfect.
So if you can tag more than 1 per learner, or as many as you can. So taking the time and looking at those, going back and making sure that that section on the PRF, it says, you know, please indicate it's your choice, to strongly encourage them to do that, and that will boost up. But on a whole, the colleges have do struggle with the 30% because I'm not going to say it. Our learners are not as barriered as some in the community areas. So I'm finding we used to get a lot more referrals out to, as an example, Ontario Works. We're having less Ontario Works recipients in our program compared to before. So we've lost that sort of factor in the suitability. It's a struggle every time. And we look at it often just to see what else we can reach out to see if we can nab some more of those suitability factors.
But actually, I know also one thing. Well, we're experiencing the same thing, but also in terms of for work, we saw that the definition of employment interview as a person who's unemployed is if they work less than 20 hours a week. So I'm wondering if the same definition applies with LBS because it's under Employment Ontario.
That's a good question.
Can you repeat the question, Emily?
Well, because for Employment Ontario services, like in the employment sector, a person is eligible for the service if they are unemployed, and unemployed in their definition is if they don't work at all, or if they work less than 20 hours a week. It's considered as unemployed because they are underemployed.
Oh.
There's no I don't know. Is there I don't think there's a definition. And then again, it's a student or a learner can consider them being part-time. I don't think we've ever delved into how many hours a week they consider themselves to be a part-time employee.
Yeah, it's you're right. There isn't a definition in writing around those number of hours. It's really what the learner perceives themselves to be doing.
Yeah, because a lot of times, a lot of the learners who say they're employed part-time are between 15 to 20 hours a week employed. So, I mean, I don't know. I haven't come across a definition anywhere, Brenda. So
No.
I just know that for the employment services, they have a clear definition because that determines their eligibility for the service.
And we don't have those definitions in LBS.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is, I think, a good thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So keeping your learner active. So our last session, we touched base on updating learner progress and milestones. So making sure you don't have, or you've got a strategy for making sure that your learners don't become inactive. And then also incorporating your milestones and making sure that your milestones, there is at least one milestone in the learner plan or in as a plan item that is either in progress, started, and hopefully by the time they finish also has been attempted and attained. But everyone, I think, at this point in the life of CaMS has got that pretty well squared away. And then learner exits, again, making sure you are getting what you need out of your data and making sure that your learner referrals, so out to post-secondary, that type of thing, that you're doing it as a plan item. So hopefully we'll go into a little bit more detail about making sure that if a learner has gone off to post-secondary, that you are making sure that that's a plan item and an in and out plan item. And then just with the parameters for us as how to organize that. And then our learner exits and strategies around that and follow-ups, which we just touched base with a little bit more.
sorry, Brenda, to interrupt.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Megan Kuznell wants to know what are the repercussions for inactive learners? And she also wants to know, does it negatively affect any reports, mostly just the ETC coming back and saying, why isn't this up to date, etc.? And then Tracy Granger has another question after that.
Okay. So inactive learners, we were talking about it, and there was some changes between 60 days and 90 days. At one point, I think it was 90 days, but I just looked at the newest report user guide, and it's 60 days for that. Now, realistically, students are going to be inactive fairly quickly within a 60-day time frame. So it's not good to have a whole bunch of them. There's no negative impact besides your ETC asking you probably why there hasn't been any activity on a learner's file. It might be that they're doing a whole ton of stuff within the program. And that's the only way that the ministry can see that there's something going on with the learner. So yeah, it's, to me, 60 days is not a long time. And it means a lot of work for a lot of people. If they have to go in there every 60 days and put something in the learner's file or the learner plan, touch the CAMS system. I don't think there's anything in writing that they can, that at the moment, that it's a negative besides your ETC saying, what are your students doing? Twyla and I have tried to organize, she's the keeper of the inactive listing, and it's a going concern, especially with the pandemic. We've also had, some room given to the students to progress, not really progress, but to attend and to do things. So it's taking longer for those learners to do that. We're just keeping an eye on it. And what Twyla does is goes in as often as she can, besides doing her milestones and everything else, and updates the learner's plan item. And that takes them off for 60 days. We probably don't really start to panic until it's hit 90 days, just because it's just too difficult to try and keep an eye on all of our active learners and seeing every 60 days. It's been just crazy.
Yep. We've also, sometimes due to things coming up on the inactive listing, we've also had to introduce Milestone in some areas where we see there's a time lapse of a student, because they're logically progressing the way they should, but for some reason they're showing up on the inactive listing. And then that has helped us to identify areas where we needed to add in a milestone so that they can show that they are still in and they are still progressing. So we don't do that too often. That was early in the days when we were setting up the milestones and the progression of them. So that's where that came into play. Also, I use the inactive listing also to sometimes I have to jog the memory of some of our teachers. So and it's not a bad thing. They get busy too. So it just, sometimes I'll look at it, kind of do a review, and then I'll send an email out to whoever's applicable and just say, are they ready to write that milestone yet? Because we could kind of use it now. So it kind of helps the teachers as well.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here for a sec, Brenda, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think, Twyla, that illustrates what I say often in their discussions about this, that getting this data in is a major team effort. Every person involved with the program has a role in getting the data into CAMS in some way or another. And I just wanted to go back to the inactive question for a second, because there's I think sometimes a point of confusion is that the student status in CAMS can be active, active, open, approved, a number of statuses. So they can be an active student, but they can be on the inactive list, because those are not referring to the same context of active, if you can believe it. So that's why there is no effect on the data that goes into the reports for someone on the inactive list, because their overall status of their service plan is still active.
Correct.
Thank you, Barb. That's a great explanation. Yes.
Yes. It is. Yeah, the inactive listing just tells you when there's nothing been entered on someone's account. And that's it. That's essentially what it is saying you haven't touched anything on this person's account in CAMS.
Right.
So, yeah. Now, we did have another question. Do you want me to go on to the next one, dear?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, Tracy Granger says, what is an in and out plan item? So that's an in and out plan item. I think she's referring to, like, if someone fails a milestone, Brenda, you know how we put it in and out?
Mm-hmm. Or it could be, the way a student, or the way somebody puts a plan item into the system. So there's a number of different ways. You can start a plan item and have it in progress for a length of time, or you could have a system where you receive a milestone. It's a plan item. You're putting it in as a one-day thing. You have it, it's checked off, and it's an in-out. That's what I mean by in-out plan item. There are some that are stay in progress, and then there are some programs that just grab the milestone and have it basically go in and out within CaMS in one particular, data entry time.
Yep, and that's what I do. That's what I use for the milestones that people have attempted and have not attained them, like or did not pass the milestone. They're put in and out. That way that keeps that person off the inactive listing, because you've actually entered something on their account. It's gone in and out, but doing that keeps them on your inactive listing, off of your inactive listing. So that way they're good for another now 60 days. So that's why it's important that your faculty hand in those milestones that they don't attain, because that's going to keep your inactive listing short, and that's what you want. You don't want a long one.
Yeah, again, this is the process that we've got here at the college at Algonquin.
Mm-hmm.
Ask Barb to repeat what she said. Teresa asked, would you mind repeating what you just said, Barb? And that was Teresa Gormley-Hirmer. Sorry if I butchered the name.
Yep, that's okay. Yes, Teresa, I'll repeat that. So in the overall CaMS system, a service plan can have a number of different statuses. That could be open, it could be approved, it could be active, it could be closed. So for students to count toward our measures and to show up in our reports, their status has to be active. However, they can appear on the inactive list if there hasn't been any activity around their file in 60 days, but they are still in the overall active status in the program. So that's why they're still counting toward all the measures, even if there hasn't been any activity entered into CaMS within 60 days about that student. So that it's too bad ministry maybe couldn't have chosen a different term for one or the other of those, because they're not the same.
Okay, so now somebody else has a question here. Okay, sorry, let me scroll down here. Is there some negative, where did you go? Is there some negative result of failed milestones? Not as far as I know. We've at Algonquin, Brenda and I set up a rule that our students should try the milestones twice. That is something that we've put in place with our faculty as well. So every milestone, the student should try it twice, whether they fail it or not. After 2 times, they don't have to try it again. They can move on to the next one. And so normally, like let's say a student tries milestone 39. They do it once, they didn't attain it, they failed it. So I get it. I entered into CaMS in and out. And then I wait, and after 30 days, they can try the same milestone again. That's another regulation that we have. They can be tried twice again, but they have to wait 30 days before the next one. They try it again. If it's passed, then I enter it, and then we progress on to the next milestone. If they fail it, if they don't attain it, then we just put down that it's not attained. I'll usually put in the comments that that's the second milestone, and I'll close off that milestone and move on to the next one anyway, just to kind of show that they tried to progress. They haven't passed that skill, but that's okay. They can go on to the next one, because there's plenty of times where people will fail one milestone and they pass the next one. So it's just a case of who knows why they failed them, but there's no negative impact, I don't think.
No, as long as you have at least one that's successfully attained, you get the progress measure checkbox.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Chris from Northern College says, if you put not attained, what do people put for the reason behind not being successful, as we need to put something there? Nothing. It's not attained, and you close the date, and that's it. You don't have to put a reason. I never have, and we've never been asked about it from our rep.
No, it's not a requirement.
Usually your milestone indicates, like the actual milestone itself has whether it's been attained or not attained. So they didn't get the right mark, or they didn't attain all of the items to be successful on that particular milestone. We've never been asked to show why they're not attained.
Okay.
Because just, it's Chris again. Just because I know if I put it not attained, then another bar pops up and it says, what is the reason? And it'll say good cause. And there's a few other things that pop up on the learner plan.
Really?
Okay. So yeah, we don't use that learner plan. So that is a
Okay.
different item. Because I don't know if there's somebody else in the session that can help Chris out with that.
Well, Jessica's got her hand up, so maybe Jessica has something to add.
You know what? My hand was up for a different question.
Sorry.
Was that about, adding an explanation for failed milestone? Was that the question?
Yes.
You know what? Like I'm with all the others. We never have. We've never written anything in for an explanation. It could be a bad day for a student. You know what? Like it could be for all sorts of reasons, but we never have included any reason as to why someone has failed it. We do try to find something that's maybe like a scaffold situation where it's like maybe a different milestone to get them to the point, or try again, like any kind of situation to help get something attained.
Okay, so I guess the best way, since we upload our LPs, maybe the best way for me is to go right into CaMS and do it in there then, and not on the LP. So then it doesn't pop up and ask me these things, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the LP. I don't
Okay.
think we've ever used it, Brenda?
Okay.
We've not used it that way.
Yeah, the electronic learner plan that Chris is talking about is not something a lot of colleges use, because most have, created their own version of the learner plan. But I know the field you're talking about, Chris, that pops up there, but it's not attached to performance. Like if it's not attained, it's not attained. And if it is attained, and it's, you get credit for that one and only one, even if they do 10. So Chris, I can't remember the choices other than I remember good cause and something else.
I can't remember what the other ones were here, but I just know that we have to put something there.
Yeah, you do for the electronic learning plan too.
Yeah, okay.
But it's not attached right now anyway. It's not attached to a performance measure.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so Bryn, we have a couple of questions. Jessica still has her hand up, and then Megan has a question in the chat. So I was going to say, let's answer Jessica first, and then Megan, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you so much. I'll hopefully ask very quickly. I'm just trying to find out or figure out when progress is captured. I'm assuming it's ongoing, like it's reflected on each DSQ, not after a student is closed, right? So when we say ongoing. That we need, it's ongoing. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And then, sorry, I seem to have skipped Emil's question in the chat. Is it okay if I go on to the next one, dear? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. I had a question about report 61. New cases on top of the list. What do they include? Open, active, inactive, but open in the current year. Sometimes it seems like our numbers don't add up with the new cases on report 61. Oh, and then Barb says, Emil, do you mean they don't add up to the cases on report 64? So Emil, if you want to clarify that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yes, well, basically, I just want to make sure what because according to the definition that I saw in the guide, it says is that all the plans that have that had an open learning plan open during the current year. But it seems like the numbers that we're having from one report to the other and our internal spreadsheet, it doesn't add up. I just want to make sure the definition of what the new cases are in report 61, that we understand what it is about. Like
part of the reason that they don't line up is because the report 64 is monthly and the report 61 is weekly. So
yes, but does that include also the inactive cases that may have, I guess, an open? No, it doesn't.
No, it might be that your activity, your 61 and your 64 might be different because one takes out the re-entries. So you have to watch your re-entry, your returning students basically. But it is potentially a combination of also what Barb said was that there's a discrepancy in the timing of those two reports also.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I
And
think that's a good comment, Brenda, because 64 is unique students, not service plans.
that's correct. Yeah.
But 61 is service plans.
Okay, yes. Perfect.
Okay, so I'll move on to Megan's question. Megan is asking, so when you have not attained milestone in the learner file on CaMS, when you get to that section on CaMS, when you're closing out the learner, there is that question that says, has the learner completed all items in the LP? Do you have to say no then?
So for us at Algonquin College, we'll go back one. If a learner's plan items, if there's nothing, so let's say manage learning, there's 2 or 3 milestones within that managed learning section. They've attained one and not attained the other. We count that one attained milestone as attained.
Yes.
So that it's when you're going to exit that person, you can say yes, that it's a different, actually it's different section. I'm just sort of trying to figure out for your milestones. Attained milestone is part of your progress. When you're exiting a learner, what we have interpreted that particular question on the exit is, have they attained everything that they needed to be successful and learn? Doesn't necessarily mean that they've attained all of their plan items. It means, did they move forward? Are they going towards their goal? And did they attain everything that they needed to attain that goal? So for us, a learner might not have attained a grade in math, but they got the milestone, but they went and did a mature student test at the college and they passed that and they're off to their post-secondary, then we would say on that exit section that yes, they attained everything that they needed to learn within our program to be successful and move out. Does that help you, Megan?
Yes, that's fantastic. Thanks, Brenda.
Okay.
And I would
Yeah, it's
say
a different thing.
that approach that Brenda describes is something that the college has talked about very early on in the use of CaMS, because as much as possible as a college sector, we try to have some consistent interpretations of some of these things that are not well defined. And that was something we talked about at the beginning, and Brenda articulated it very well. It's not that question, did they complete everything, doesn't, really is in our interpretation, did they complete everything they need to move on, which may not be every single milestone.
Yeah.
Okay, and okay, so the next question, I see Jessica has her hand up. So we've done everything in the chat so far. So yeah, Jessica, go ahead.
Thank you. I find it difficult at the closure piece, kind of similar to our question that we just addressed is, especially when somebody's changed their goal. For example, let's say their goal program is with our college and they end up going with a different goal path and still go into post-sec. I still count that as a win. And more often than not, we've referred them to both programs. They've just chosen a different goal. So I'm wondering if we can also capture that as a referral, even though they've changed their goal and like their learner plan essentially has changed. They might not need all the courses that they originally said they needed, but they've gone on to post-sec. Does anyone still capture that as, say, a referral to post-secondary as well? Because right now,
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Like when somebody's changed their goal and they no longer need us, I'm often left there going, well, here's this really great outcome. And like more often than not, we are telling them about their different options and programs. It's just not well captured. Like I want to capture that as a referral so that we're getting that tick at closure. It's just more often than not, I'm adding the referral to post-sec only if I can see some clear referral, like their goal program is the same, or they have an OCAS kind of ID.
Yeah. You can capture them. Brenda does it at closing. Go ahead and explain, Brenda, about the post-secondary referrals.
Yeah, so we do a plan item. So it's two different. So we do a plan item that we've referred them out to post-secondary. And then that particular plan item, what I do is I put a note in there in that plan item saying that it might be that they've applied to the college in the fall of 21 fall. And then I indicate, because we have access to the same system as the college. So I'm able to say what program they've applied to. And it also is, at exit, we also survey them. So a lot of the time we get a correlation too, is they provide us with that information. I'm off to vet tech, see you later. I'm off to St. Lawrence for another program. So we can indicate to in CaMS that they have had a successful referral out and that they are off into a post-secondary. Now for the capturing it on the exit screen, the reason for like what are they doing now is a little bit different. If they have indicated they're off to post-secondary in the fall, we will on our exit form capture what they are currently doing. So they might have a referral out as a plan item going off to post-secondary, but we actually exit them out as employed part-time, let's say, as an example. But we do still get that brownie point as a referral out, and then we're capturing the current information in the exit spot. But we say yes, that they've attained what they wanted to do with us. It's just a different goal. Yeah. Does that help, Jessica? Did I explain it correctly?
Sorry, I typed my response. I wasn't really thinking. Yes, that does. Thank you so much.
Okay. Barb, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree. And we count the successes in as many ways that we can.
Yes.
And right now, those completion stats do not affect any of our performance measures, even though we see them coming up on the report 64, but right now they don't count toward anything.
Mm-hmm.
In the future, if they do, I'm sure we'll be having more of these discussions. And they used to. The first couple of years of CaMS, that completion section did count toward the overall measures, but then the ministry took it out because they knew that they weren't getting good data. And that was back in about 2013-14, and they haven't yet put it back in or created an alternate measure for completion. So if they do at some point, we'll be talking about that some more for sure.
Yeah, and being able to speak to whatever notes you put in there, you as a program, your programs, you have a process in involving your CaMS on that. It should be something that you can speak to. So regardless of how you put it in there, you've got to be able to speak to it and back it up as much as you can, as often as you can.
Yeah, and Valerie Curry made a comment in the chat saying RETC said that as long as they are going into post-secondary within 9 to 12 months, we can exit them to post-secondary.
Wow. Wow. Woo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's been a fairly common practice.
Okay, that's not something we do. So hey, Twyla, guess what? We might on April 1st. Thank you. This is good for me, but good for us. Yes.
Yeah, makes our lives easier.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
Yeah. Yep. So
It's another one of those things that's not written anywhere, but has become very early on became a pretty common practice.
Okay.
You know,
Might have lost that in all of the conversations, but it's good. It's good.
yeah.
but I'm sure there are ETCs who would dispute it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Probably. Not
Well,
close.
that might be our first aha moment, Bryn.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We have lots. I had lots today actually in our follow-up meeting earlier today too.
Yeah. Okay, you could probably go ahead on with your PowerPoint presentation. We got a bit of a pause there, but continue.
No, that's good. This is
continue.
perfect.
Turn your head to what?
This is exactly what I wanted to have happen. So it's awesome. So for report 61, now this is basically everything that you put into CaMS comes out in report 61. The main items that I want to make sure we used to do it weekly. I used to look at this report weekly. I will admit, since COVID, this has not been looked at very often, just because we've been trying to work our way through our processes and that type of thing. I might look at this monthly, but before COVID, I used to look at this on a weekly basis, grab the data, take a peek at it, and then move forward. But because we've had really difficult timing, we want to focus on our students. This report hasn't been looked at as often as it should be or was, but I did want to sort of go over the key elements for it, because it does give you an opportunity on a weekly basis, if you can, look at and make sure that your people in CAMS, your learners in CAMS, have got all our checking points as much as possible, and you're not having to scramble closer to the end of your program, or potentially missed an opportunity because they've exited and you haven't been able to capture everything. What you really want to make sure is that you've got an opened and approved. That means that everything that was a part of entering that student learner into CAMS has been completed. And then let me just see. Yes, competency client. Okay, so that particular item on our column is, you don't want any no's on there. You want everybody to be a yes, because that means that you have opened up a milestone for that learner, and that eventually they will count. So you want to make sure, if you got a no as a competency, that you go in and create a milestone for that particular person. And then number of inactives. So we had a good conversation about inactives already. So this is a report from our ACE Links program, and they do a remarkable job of making sure that their inactives are pretty low. And then the reentry is actually a new column in the report 61. And it used to be where you had to do your own sorting to find your duplicate learners. And now it is, I wrote it down and I can't find it, but it is now oh, right beside the competency client. You'll see the word reentry, I cut it off. But that allows you to count basically all of your returning learners that returned within the fiscal year, so April and March. Okay, any questions on that part?
So just to clarify that, Brenda, they're not duplicates in terms of duplicate learners in CAMS. They're just people with more than one service plan in the current fiscal year.
Yes.
Because they exited and came back in.
Thank you. Yes, they're not a duplicate learner in CAMS yet. They're a duplicate service plan within your program.
Right, which is pretty common.
Yes, yeah. And it's too bad we don't get sort of points for that they come back and they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of things we don't get points for.
It's really too bad you can't skip doing their follow-up.
No kidding.
Like the 3-6-12 follow-ups.
Yes.
Because that would be a much more applicable thing that the service providers could use, I think, to cut back on some of that work.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, is everybody comfortable with sorting through the report 61, taking out their learners that were from last fiscal year, which is a part of it, just so that you can look at your data in a cleaner, like, fiscal year view?
I'm thinking, Brenda, that we might have a session upcoming on looking at report 61 and 64.
Okay.
Sort of as a walkthrough, because there's a couple of super good tips and tricks, especially for 61, that help with sorting it, as I'm sure you know. And so we can certainly address some of that today, but just as a preview, I think we'll have a session that looks more specifically at how to manipulate that report in the future, in the near future.
Yeah, and that's good. If we're gonna have one, I think it's a good thing, because everybody has a different way of looking at it. So I won't do it today because Yeah, I think our focus would be probably more on the other reports besides report 61, having everything basically. But yeah, if everyone's okay, I'm not going to do a quick review on the sort section.
Okay,
Yeah,
sounds good.
I know in the chat there, Chris says they would appreciate a sorting webinar as they're not sure how to manipulate.
Yeah.
So you're saying, Barb, that that's coming up. Is that in that email that went out to everybody?
No, it's just in the chat now.
Fantastic.
You
See,
can hold me to it.
I talk faster than I read, right?
There you go. That's okay. You know, I could consider, you know, we could consider that sort of the next in line of some of the CAMS related workshops that we want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. No, and I think because there's so much you could do with report 61. It is a nice report, it does have everything. The one thing it's missing, and Barb, you and I were chatting, is it's too bad there is not a column for missing sins. Yes,
Oh my
no.
gosh.
And if there's any way that we can all ask our ETCs to come up with adding that column onto report 61, I think that would be huge for us to be also able to, you know, not open anybody in error. We
Yeah.
can get on it when the learner is active. Yeah, it would be good.
And that's something where the CSC is provincially asking the ministry to do.
That's good.
And report 61 would be the natural place for it to land because everything from the participant registration form lands in report 61.
It
Yep.
does, yeah. Now, Marcy's asking if only SPRAs have access to 61. And I think so, Brenda, 'cause didn't you have to give me special access to that when I covered for you when you were away on vacation one time? I don't think I had it naturally, and I'm not a SPRA, so.
Yeah, I think it is an extra, oh gosh, it's been such a long time. I should have been ready for that question.
You got to take more vacation time. Yeah.
I think it's not just SPRAs. I think it's the difference between service provider staff and service provider manager. Administrator, whatever the terms are. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not just for SPRAs, I don't think, but I think you have to have like the level of access, the middle level of access kind of.
The middle. And it is something I would, if you are the CAMS data entry person, it wouldn't hurt to ask your manager, whoever has that SPRA access, to have you request that you have access to that. It is a really good report. And as the more reports you get to see as the person putting information into the system, the easier it is for you to understand where your data comes from, what you need to strategize to come up with ideas on improving, let's say, progress, suitability, that type of thing, because you're seeing that data, you're seeing that information in report 61 and report 64. So if you don't have it, you could request it. It's not a unusual request to ask, and it's for continuous improvement, basically, of the system.
Yeah, and Chris from Northern is saying she's not a SPRA, but she can see the case activity report. I think there's a bit of a misnomer because I'm pretty sure that the ministry's designation for viewing those reports is SP manager, but it doesn't mean you have to be a manager in the college.
Right.
But I think that's sometimes how it's interpreted. It's just a level of access to reporting that allows you to better manage the data. So yeah, so going back to whoever the SPRA is and asking for that level of access is, yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the way that I got access to it, I put it through to Brenda, and I think Brenda put it through to Claire and Connie, I think at the time. So it had to go through to be approved, but your boss is the best person to talk to, or if you have an LBS person like Brenda, who's run away, then that's the best person to contact. Just kind of send an email out, include everybody involved with CAMS is pretty much how I would do it.
Yeah.
I can after this just take a screenshot of my access and Twyla's access, and then that way I'll send it to you, Barb, and then it'll be like, this is the access I need to be able to get to the reports.
Yeah.
I think that would be easy.
Yeah. And
Visual,
ultimately,
I
it is a
think.
decision of the
Ultimately, yeah.
at
Yeah.
your college, how your manager or whoever the SPRA is, you know, whether they want to give you access. But it's certainly, I mean, there's no big secrets contained in these reports. And they really, having access to them and being able to participate in discussions like this, you know, to better understand them, I think it was so useful.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it is ultimately a program decision, but yeah, it is extremely useful. I agree. I agree. Okay, so I don't have a lot. Oh, I was going to show basically, let me just see if I can do this at a decent, is our, on, when we were looking at the report 61 on a regular basis, we had basically a data integrity tool that sort of gave us a picture. Instead of all of those columns, what we did is we created a tracking tool that we would potentially add every week. I can share this with Barb. I don't know how big it is for you. Can you guys see the spreadsheet?
You can
First
see
of all,
it's pretty small.
it's pretty small. Here, let's see if I can do it.
My old eyes can't read it.
No, that's good. That's good. I'm just gonna scroll through.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
basically,
I forget I
better?
have a big monitor, so for me it's like, that's
Yeah.
massive, but it's like my monitor is like this big.
So basically, it's got formulas in it, and it helps us sort of get a picture of where we need to potentially focus on items that are sort of lagging and may cause concern. So it's done on a monthly basis, and basically a lot of the data comes from report 61. It also comes from us within the program itself. So we have, I probably scrolled that way too fast, but basically our active, closed, new, all of that information comes from report 61. Then unique learners, so your returning or re-entry learners, that type of thing. We do look for our no competency. So on a weekly basis, what I would do is potentially, if let's say Mary Kay or Twyla forgot to fully open and approve a learner, it would indicate on there, and I would go over, I would shoot them an email and just say that, you know, you need to finish the process for this particular learner. Same with a yes competency. I would check the no's, and then I would be able to quickly say, well, this person is still active and good to go. We need to throw a milestone in there. And then other items to help us sort of strategize if we needed to ramp up input into the system, closing out of the system. It would be our physical counting of our files, that type of thing in our office. It's been a little bit more of a challenge because we're not in the office and paperwork is gone, which I would never have thought I would ever say that I miss my paper, but for certain certain aspects, not having a paper file has been an impact for sure in our system and the way we do things. It's sometimes I want my piece of paper. So this is, I can share this with you, Barb. And just out to everybody, I think, you know, you probably already have tracking tools, but I'll share this anyways, just in case. It might be a useful tool for people.
Thanks, Brenda. That's super good. And maybe when we do our session on looking at a couple of these reports, we can use that tool as an example of how to use some of that data.
Yes, for sure. Be happy to help.
Yeah, notice
Okay,
the
so,
we there in my sentence.
We? Yes, I heard that. That's good. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. This is.
You always are.
I just want to point out the time, ladies. It's 3 o'clock. Not sure
Okay.
if you want to take a 5-minute break. How do you guys feel about that? Does everyone want to keep going, or do we want that 5-minute break?
Let's take 5.
Let's
Let's
take
say
5.
5.
Yeah,
Okay.
but only 5. It's 3:01, so we'll be back on at 3:06.
Sounds
like a
great.
plan.
Okay.
Good
Yep.
job, Twyla.
Yes, I learned how to watch the time. Yay for me. Okay. See this. We'll see you back here in 5.
I'm going to pause the recording. So if anyone is listening afterward to the recording, you'll notice a quick pause in here.
Okay, Brenda, here's some more of my stunning time telling skills. It's 3:06.
And we are back.
We're back. Awesome. Okay, so Barb, have you hit record?
Yes, we're good to go. Thank you for reminding me.
There's
That's
there's a comment in the chat, guys. Recording. Oh, okay. I did not attend the first session for new users, but I wonder if a recorded Zoom walking through a user would be helpful for internal training.
So Jessica, that was more or less the first session, was the walkthrough of entering a new student. That's fair to say, right, Twyla?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
all about putting in a new participant. Yep.
Right. So that is recorded, Jessica, and could be used for internal training for sure.
Awesome. I think that's such a great way. Like back when I first started with CaMS, like it was just this huge paper manual of snips and pictures. Really, like sometimes it's nice just to rewatch a video a few times and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's the ministry doesn't provide sort of training materials other than those written manuals that are a little difficult to wade through. Yeah, I'm gonna just very briefly I'll also tell you that in 2016 I worked with one of the regional networks to produce sort of a step-by-step screenshot guide for new users to CaMS, and some of you might have seen it, and we're actually hoping to update that guide for in the coming year, like after April 1st in the new business year. And it was a nice step-by-step. It was paper-based, but it did have tons of screenshots in it. It's 4.5 years old now, so it needs to be updated, but hopefully we'll get to update that this year and have another more up-to-date paper reference as well that's not based on the ministry text-based guides that we have now. So watch for that one.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a lot of changes in the 4.5 years, Barb. So you might find your paper, your presentation is still really good. If there's some changes, they're probably very minimal.
I think that like the functional changes were minimal, but when they did that upgrade to the new interface, it means the screenshots don't have the same look anymore.
Yes.
Even though
yes.
the functionality is similar or almost the same.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that grand update that happened. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but you're right. We're still pressing the same buttons.
Yes.
True.
Okay, I'm gonna jump into report 20, which is the inactive cases. Now, we did a lot of conversation at the beginning of it, so and the other day. So what I'm hoping is that just to clarify, it's a no activity after 60 days. And it's more the use of it. So it could be used to reconnect with the learner, to review the learner plan, if applicable, administer a milestone, and also to touch base so that, your learner, impact learner retention, and even just a goal review. Again, I can't see any program really, using that 60-day as a hard and fast rule, because it would just be too onerous of a task, I think, the way we've got everything else to try and manage. And then we also talked about how to reactivate a learner, and that was to place a note in the learner service plan. And the suggestion would be to add a comment in a in-progress milestone if you have one, or even in a milestone or a learning activity somewhere within the plan items, would be you know, this is what we do, but sometimes even putting a note in somewhere else within the service plan itself takes that student off of the inactive listing. We've always used the plan items and either in progress or a learning activity. We put in a note in there.
Well, it's also a chance to check your milestones because, I mean, when it comes to progress, within a certain time frame, your students should be completing milestones if they're so far into a level. So it's a way for you to kind of touch base with your faculty if you're seeing that somebody should have probably done a milestone and you haven't received it. Sometimes it's just a case they forgot to send it to you, which has happened to me, especially since where we've closed down and they're not handing those paperwork in. There's been a few times where I've had teachers just forget to send it to me. They have it done. They forgot to send it. So that's where the inactive listing helps out with that. It's basically a little, almost like a poke to you to look at this person, make sure everything's okay. So when I'm processing these, I look through and make sure that everything, what's in CaMS is matching the progress of the learner. Like it's just an overview. I take the time to look at it and figure out if there's any steps that have been missed or if there's any mistakes.
And then report 19A. So that's our follow-up report. And it's available weekly. Does anybody have any questions before I go forward on the inactive listing? Everybody, we've had a good discussion about it. No chatting, no.
Nothing in the chat.
Okay, cool. All right. Sorry, I keep checking. I should just say, you guys will let me know. You will let me know.
We're good.
So for 19A, the follow-up report, for us, it's been a bit of a challenge. Again, like I said before, I missed my paperwork. We had a really good, solid way of keeping on task with our follow-ups by using a binder. And it was a monthly binder. And we basically, when I exited a learner, I threw that exit and follow-up report into the learner binder, and then it was pulled out and called and emailed, and I didn't have to think anything about it. It also allowed for us to, if I exited a learner, let's say 3 weeks afterwards, and it's into the other, into a month now, I'll give you an example. January, I have somebody who I backdated to exit out of CaMS as of the 29th of January. The system automatically puts that follow-up 3 months ahead, but it's not really a true picture of when that actual learner left. So it's now February. She's going to have a follow-up February, March, April, in May, but really she should have her follow-up in April. So we've had some challenges around trying to find out when the 3 and the 6 and 12 month and make it real for the learner. And we've come up with a couple of ways of doing it, but I was hoping that we could have a conversation about how, who's been having challenges, how it's been working. Right now, there is the potential backlog of exiting out of CaMS, because I know a lot of programs were not taking their learners out of CaMS. And the true tracking of the follow-ups and other challenges. And Jessica has her hand up, I think.
Yes,
Yes, Jessica.
Just recently made some kind of, like, for me, a bit of a breakthrough. I took over a little while ago from Francine, and I was very new to the follow-up piece, not new to the calling and the tracking of it, but for our internal process, we have spreadsheets, and they're added to by basically the college exiters. So we have a records officer that will exit students when they're done or withdrawn, and that date that they're filed as online is their date that they've been exited from the college. So sometimes I have to catch up with that, but it's a great way to sort it. So each spreadsheet outlines the months that they've been exited, so I can always go back, and then the 3 months of follow-up. So that's been helping. And so when I pull the pending review list, I go list by list. So if it's, for example, I'm working on January, I'm a little bit behind. January 2021 has its own spreadsheet with, let's say 20 students. I make my way through, and once it's time for follow-up, I just pull up the pending review list and then just control F, so control find, and I find each student in the pending reviews, update them, and it's been so fast. So instead of pulling that report and then just all willy-nilly looking for all the 3 months and all the 12 months, I go list by list. So I take our college exit to be the master of when I'm doing follow-up and stuff. And right now, unfortunately, we lost Terry, who was doing all the follow-up piece. So that's fallen to me, and it's been working very smoothly. So if that is helpful information, it's easier to go off of that college date, and we use that for archiving too.
Yeah. And that's something similar to what we do too. We're part of the college system. So the exit date from our academic upgrading program, we try to make sure that we fall back to that particular item. It's just looking, when you're pulling off that pending review list, it never matches. So we've done something similar, Jessica, and pull the data off of that 19A and then incorporate other fields into it to really be able to strategize on this 3 months should be in April, it should be in March, that type of thing. And what I've just started to do, and I don't know if anybody has done it, is changing, once you've exited a learner, you can actually go in and change the schedule date in CaMS. And I would like to show that if you think that would be beneficial for everybody today.
I think it would.
Okay, all right. So yes, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you how to rewind CaMS to the true exit date, update the event at exit, as long as a follow-up is in the future, you can change that schedule date. So that was like an aha moment from a colleague of ours. It's like, oh, you can do that? I didn't know that. So bear with me. Yeah.
A lot of times when I'm doing the follow-up, I'll put it in, and then I'll go into the next event for the next follow-up and change that date so it reflects the right date that we need for the next follow-up. That way, when it shows up on the pending review list or Brenda's 19A report, it comes in at the proper time. So now there's a couple of comments on that. Chris from Northern says he's done that. Chris, I'm sorry, Chris.
She.
Is Chris a she?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So Chris has done that, changed the event date. And Jessica, you have your hand up. Go for it.
To lower the hand. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I did it before too, so it's you're among company here.
Sorry, I decided I wasn't going to try and get Cheryl up and running well beforehand, because most likely I'd have to do it all over again.
Yeah, you
So
time out.
Jump in.
Yep.
Yeah. So Cheryl left January the 29th, and I just took her out today because I am behind. So we closed her. So let me know if it needs to be brought up a bit more.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Bryn, I can see it fine, but I'm pretty sure you'll probably need to zoom in a little bit there.
Now I don't know how to zoom. I thought there was a zoom in here.
Is it the dashes on the upper right corner there?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No, the dash is in the upper right over on the side there. Is it there? Nope. No, maybe not. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
That's okay. We can.
Okay. So what, a quick review. Cheryl actually left off for post-secondary in the fall. I remember I was saying that I put a plan item in for that. So I have got her going, referred out to other programs and services. And she left let me just see if I can open it and just give a quick show the comment section. So this is where we indicate 21 fall vet tech. So she's gone on. We have that on her exit form exit survey that we sent to her. So that was one item that I made sure I updated before I closed her. So she's all closed. What I'm going to do is go into events. I'm going to just move this down. So see how the case review here, the start date, because I exited her today, it's saying her review scheduled date should be May. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and change it to April, because she literally needs to have a review in April. So you can go in and just change that to April and save. So this is something I've started to incorporate when I take somebody out of the program. So I'm going to go back into here and
No, you just have to reload your screen there, dear.
Thank
Just
you.
close that. Yeah, close that and go back in and it'll change.
There
yeah.
we go. I refreshed. Sorry.
There you go. Yep.
Here we are. Okay. So now the 19A report will pick up April the 29th now as her review date, and not the 17th of May. Does anybody have, and this will make it a lot truer for the system, as long as it's in the future. And what our aim is to make sure if it's a 3-month follow-up that it's done within the 3-month time frame. Like I exit that person out. So our goal is to try and get people exited out of the system within a 3 to 4 week, very latest 4-week time frame. I will admit I am way behind on my exits. And so we're having to rejig on how, if it's a 3 or a 6 month follow-up, some of them are going to be unknowns just because we haven't been able to contact them. But on a regular basis, what we do, the process is to check Genesis, our college system, to see if they've gone off to post-secondary or if they're going to post-secondary, and trying to update that information without contacting the learner too.
Yeah. Sharon Leroy has a question for you, Bryn. Will the 6 and 12 month follow-ups then be based on the rescheduled 3-month date?
It should.
They will.
Yeah. Yep, because the system, the system is grabbing the events, the event, not the exit date of the learner.
That's right. The system does the math for you, but because you've changed the date of the scheduled follow-up, then it does the math according to what's in that scheduled date. It's not smart enough to say, oh, but they were exited on that date. It does what it's told.
Yeah.
Not like me. No. And just so you know, Brenda, I double checked, and on my pending review list, Cheryl Sizer's outcome at 3 months comes up on April 29th, 2021, just as you typed it in.
Awesome.
Yep.
Here we go. Okay. Does anybody have any other concerns about follow-ups or how they're managing their follow-ups, or would like to share? We've got a little bit of time before we hit the DSQ reporting. Everybody's good? Okay.
Don't see anything else in the chat.
Okay. So
and we actually did have a very fulsome conversation about follow-ups this morning, so that was also helpful because I think some of the same people were on this morning's call too.
Yeah, no, it's good. And those new strategies of how to connect with the learner, we tell you, Twyla and I are going to be talking.
Yeah, but like I said, there's one thing I'd love to see changed about that follow-up. It's that unknown. I hate typing unknown because it should be unable or no reply as opposed to unknown, because, it's kind of misleading, really.
Yes. Okay, Novi, we see your message. Thanks for joining us, Novi.
So our next report that we can chat about is the report 64. So this is your monthly available report. This is basically providing your program, basically how we're measuring up to our service quality measures. And it is, let me just see what I've got here. So I know Sarah Delicate did an amazing job on her last sort of session about the detailed DSQ. I'm just going to touch base on some of the items, and it's more on the view of, if you're looking at this on a monthly basis, what you should be watching for and what you should be trying to go back and look at data-wise to make sure you've got the truest, purest numbers in the DSQ, and how you can strategize them to pump them up. So this is from our ACE links. It's a fairly recent one. So the customer service, the customer satisfaction, this is the section where it's only your exited learners are the denominators for this area of the DSQ. So that means only somebody who's left, who's answered the customer service, and then the only numbers that are, or the only customer service responses that are gathered for this, and it's a good customer service, are your 4s and 5s. If you get a 1, 2, or 3, it's not that it's not counted. It's just exit learners who get, sorry, I've got to move my thing here, are considered satisfied in this area here. For almost all of the other sections of this, it's people who have left the program in this area. Okay.
Can I add one little thing, Brenda?
Yes, please.
On that customer satisfaction survey, there is only one question that counts toward whether you get this checkbox or not. And that is the question, would you recommend this program to somebody else? So if on your customer satisfaction survey, your learners either give you a 4 or a 5, which I think is agree or strongly agree to that one question, would you recommend this program? Then it counts toward this target of at least 90% of the people saying yes to that question, or giving you a 4 or a 5, a strongly agree or an agree. The other questions on the survey don't get counted into this in any way.
And we asked that question on our follow-ups at 3, 6, and 12. The reason for that is because sometimes people will leave our program and not answer that question. So we've incorporated it into the 3, 6, and 12 so that if we get the question, we can go in and update their response to that question, because we know that that's going to show up on the DSQ report. Or don't we call this the Dairy Queen report, Brenda?
At times, yes, that is true.
Yeah. That's a good strategy, Twyla.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you would be surprised how many people will actually answer that question at 3, 6, and 12 months, and you only need it answered once. So it's a great way to get that information. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's missed at exit, yeah. Yes, Jessica. I just see her hand pop up because she's part of my screen.
We've added this kind of exit survey at the end of each online course that students complete. So I have an outpouring of data that'll be ready when they're closed. So that has been such a good strategy for us. Like I have, nearing 200 responses, and they haven't all been closed yet, but one by one I go in there and I'll highlight the ones that are closed off, and we ask that satisfaction piece. So if anyone's struggling with that, that's such a good a means to get that satisfaction piece.
That is a wonderful strategy. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I would concur. We kind of approach it that way in ACE Distance, because they're only allowed to take one course at a time. And we don't always know when they finish that course, if they're planning to take another course, like maybe they're going to sit out for a month or 2, or maybe they're going to take another one right away. So we give them we ask them to do the survey, and instead of calling it an exit survey, we call it a completion survey. And so we might have multiple copies of it before the student actually exits if they're going to continue to cycle through one course at a time. Similar to exactly what you're saying, Jessica. So if you can't get them coming, you get them going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea for us to do that, Brenda, to start
Yep.
thinking about that.
Yeah.
Like at
put
Com
them-
5 level.
Yeah, upper levels, yes. Because they
Yeah.
are getting close and sometimes they're like, I'm out of here. That's it. Yeah, and harder to grab.
Yeah. I had my aha moment. Thank you, Jessica.
So the next section is your service coordination. So again, for ACE-Links, they're doing pretty good. They have a really strong referred in because their program is attached to the John Howard Society. So a lot of the time, basically almost everybody from ACE-Links has been referred in from one of the services within the John Howard Society. And I know a lot of colleges are attached to others, services like employment services and that type of thing, that referred in is a decent measure for some colleges. Others struggle. For Nepean, we don't have anything because most of our most of our learners are word of mouth. We don't have a strategy in place for referred in from other programs like Ontario Works or ODSP, that type of thing, because your referred in has to be a documented referred in. It's usually we are just going, at least at the Nepean campus, by word of mouth on there. Your other referred outs, referred in education training, or referred out to registered or confirm receiving services within community resources. So that item there is where you're referred out to CAL services, health services. For us, we use a lot of the, our learners have to go through the college system to be assessed for their intake. They have to meet with our advisor first and have a conversation with them. So we count a lot of our referred in for under academic and education services. We can count them with that. So almost all of our learners have got a referred out. Oh, sorry. Wait, yes. I might be talking. Yeah, referred out to a college and education section. Yeah. Sorry.
So you're on the referral in page there, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Can I just jump in once more before
You
we
go
leave
for it.
referrals?
Yeah.
So we talked briefly about this before. Only one referral in or out is required to count toward the service coordination measure, just like only one successfully completed milestone is needed to count toward the progress measure. So, and not every category of referral counts. You know, there are certain ones that do or don't count, which is in the user guide, and we could talk about that in more detail at another time. But the ministry's line is that they want the service plan to tell a story about the learner's journey. And so, and I don't mean line, I mean the intention behind the learner plan. So they would like us to record as many referrals as possible, but truthfully, not everyone records every referral, that's for sure.
That's true. And and I do have the Report 64 user guide up, and I was going through that. There's only certain items that are counted once. There's certain items that are merged together. So I would encourage anybody who's got questions about how the data is pulled and put into Report 64 is to look at the user guide. For that, it does give you a lot of good information on what's counted, what's not, that type of thing.
And that's the sort of thing we'll look at when we have our session on these couple of reports to walk through them in even more detail.
Okay. I'm just going to go to the next one, and I'm just going to, just because we're going to have a more detailed conversation about what goes into them. What we use the DSQ for is to see how we're doing with our targets. So for ACE links, they're doing great in a lot of the different areas. So they're going beyond the annual target. What we've done, because we're looking at this, is noticing that their progress right now is lower than the target. So this report came out of for January's data. So what we've done is we've contacted the faculty and the manager over in ACE Links and let them know that their progress is down and that their learners have not either completed a milestone or attempted a milestone, whether it's attained or not attained. Attained is the only ones that count for the progress. So you have to have one attained milestone within the fiscal year for it to count within this progress section. So we've let them know that they need to take a look at their outstanding milestones and get their learners to attempt those milestones before the March deadline. So this is one of the main reasons why we look at these reports, is to, again, strategize, see what we can do to make sure that we're going to be on target by the end of the year.
So Brenda, would you say that this is where getting milestones that are having people not pass milestones, this is where you're going to see it? This is where it's going to affect you? Would you say that? If
you have no attained milestones, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's something, yeah, somebody asked that earlier and I just thought, oh, okay, so this is where when people think, okay, milestones, what's the repercussions of having not attained milestones? This could be a direct repercussion of that, is that you're going to be, this progress on this DSQ is not going to, it'll go down.
Yeah, yes, that's right. So what you would want to do, and most programs I think have really taken a hard look at what milestones mean something for their learners, how it can be merged into their curriculum, that means something to the learner, and that it's an attainable milestone, at least one within their time frame while they're here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where it's important that the milestone. Oh, go ahead, Barb.
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead, Twila.
Oh, I was just saying that's where it's important that the milestone you choose to submit to the student be related to the skills they're learning, because it's a better chance for them to pass the milestone, and therefore your progress numbers will be good for your DSQ.
Right.
And they'll be relevant. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead,
The relevance
Barb.
piece is still hard to actually make happen because the milestones, a lot of them are not terribly relevant, but as Brenda says, we've tried our best to make sure that we're trying to select the most relevant ones. Yep.
Yeah.
So the good news is that as long as you have one successfully attained milestones, it'll filter into this measure, and unattained ones will not affect that one attained one. So you're not getting penalized for the ones that aren't attained, as long as you have at least one that is attained. And Therese just put a question in the chat about how many AU programs are using culminating tasks. Provincially, Therese, about 16% of LBS students in all sectors and streams complete a culminating task. In the college sector, it's around 12% of students who complete a culminating task. So they're not widely used. And that is another area that at first it did count toward our overall performance measures because it's part of the completion indicators that you can see on Brenda's screen right now. But it was part of the measures that the ministry pulled out, knowing that there were problems with all of the completion measures and specifically with the culminating tasks. And I see Megan from Durham has said they only use the CT for independence, not goal path, not for anyone else. So they're not widely used. And again, at some point, if this counts again, then we'll have to look at it differently.
And Teresa also asked, a milestone has to be completed by a carryover learner in the new fiscal year in order for them to count, right?
That is correct.
And my understanding is but to count toward the progress measure, yes, they have to complete a new milestone.
Mhm.
They can still count toward learners served without
Yeah.
completing a new milestone in the new fiscal year. So April has become termed milestone month in a lot of programs, because if you want them to count toward the progress measure in the new fiscal year, you want them to do a milestone before they exit. And if they're going to exit in April or May or June, you want to make sure you get that in before they exit.
Mhm. Yeah, this DSQ is definitely looked at and monitored, usually not April, but usually May, where we look at it and see, okay, where do we need to work on this? And we also looked at the DSQ a lot in August and September to see if we needed to boost up or re-strategize on a lot of the different items. Mainly progress, to see, okay, because during, when COVID hit, we were just trying to hold on to our learners and not stress them out with anything new or extra. So we watched that progress to see, did we need to implement something on a mass scale potentially? So as part of our bi-weekly meetings, people were talking about milestone 54, which was a lot of the data, online, we spent so much time on that. If that would be something that we could ask, let's say our orientation teachers here at Woodruff to administer during orientation, because they are having to do all sorts of extra things. So, we decided not to, because for us, our progress did sort of start to pump up between September and November. But again, it utilizing this report to strategize and make sure that you're not having to scramble at the end of the year, that you're looking at it on a monthly basis to try and figure out how you're doing. And you have time to change, kind of thing. But this is what we use it a lot for sure. It's just not numbers. It's we're looking at how to improve. Okay, I think that's all I had for this one. Oh, counting unique. Yeah. So I do have a little thing, count of unique students. Unique as in your re-entries won't be in this section here. So you got to watch what you're counting here. So your learners served, like Barb had said, count your carryovers and your new learners on a monthly basis, kind of thing. And you go. Nope.
So Teresa has a question in the chat. Does report 61 identify who the carryover learners are who need to complete a milestone?
Report 61 does identify carryover learners. You can sort it to find the carryover learners. That's a good question. There is a way of looking at the milestone attempts within report 61, I do believe, that can, it gives you a number of how many milestones they've attempted.
Yeah.
So you can filter through using that report 61. Yeah.
But would it have the dates attached to it? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, let me just, let's go
That's a
take
good question. That's a good question.
That's a very good question. Yeah. So can you see a report 61 for East Links?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to make it bigger. And let me just take a look here. Whoop, sorry, at the scroll bar. It doesn't give you a date.
No.
Just a yes, competency.
Right.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Therese, the answer is no. This doesn't allow us to identify who needs a milestone
You might be able to cross-reference, so this listing and your inactive listing.
Inactive listing. I was
Yeah.
just about to say that. Your
Yes,
inactive
so-
list might be a combo.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just do, like, if you use an Excel program, just copy all your names from your this one, copy on your names on your inactive listing, put them next to each other on one worksheet, and then do a comparison analysis. And I'm sure it will show you the names.
That would be a good strategy, although it wouldn't count people, for example, who completed a milestone, say in mid-March,
Yeah.
and exited in mid-April.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not going to count
Or,
those people who
like,
are
it's
within
not
your
going to
60
have,
days.
it's one way to look at it, but it's a bit of a manual thing
Mhm.
as well. Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
And at the beginning, none of us realized that was a thing. That they had to do one in the new fiscal year to count toward the progress measure. So that was very eye-opening very early on.
Yeah, that's why a lot of times when I'm entering my milestones, I do a bit of CSIing, I like to call it. I take a look and see and make sure that the person's on track. There's nothing outstanding, those sorts of things. So when I'm looking at one person to do a milestone, I'm looking at more than just the milestone. I'm looking at the person themselves to see where they are with regards to their progress. It helps us stay on track. And you're already in the person's profile in CAMS, so you might as well take a few minutes and look at the other things you need to know to save yourself work later.
Mhm.
Could I ask you a quick question? This is Therese from Humber. So a strategy, let's say we have students completing milestones now. We had intended to enter those before the fiscal year end, but if they've already completed something in this fiscal year, would we be better off to wait until April? Just because then they count towards a new fiscal if they already have one in current.
Yeah, I know that for us at Algonquin, we have to go by the date that's on the milestone that it was done. So if it's before April 1st, we have to enter it before April 1st, because otherwise, when they do an audit on us, if our dates don't match up on our milestones and when we enter them, we might get some icky questions. So you kind of have to go by the date for us, we go by the date the milestone was done is what we enter for the system.
Okay, good. Yeah, you're right. We keep forgetting about the audits.
Yeah, I think they look at that information, don't they, Brenda? I've never.
Oh, yeah.
The audit is that's Brenda's little ball of joy. So
Yeah. Sometimes if one doesn't date the milestones, one gets around that.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to that. How you can strategize, especially if it's close to the fiscal year. There have been times in the past where we've looked at our progress, that type of thing. We try and keep it as true and non-sticky, but yeah, there are times where we haven't. I think in the beginning of those where it was like, oh my gosh, we have to have progress, we have to have a milestone done, I think we were more willing to sort of wiggle a little bit. But I think like Twyla is using the inactive listing and that type of thing, because we're doing such a good job and our processes are ingrained with our teachers too, that we try not to wiggle it too much. But yeah, it's a per program strategy, I think I would say.
Mm-hmm. And Therese, I can tell you for sure that is like that kind, like what you're suggesting of maybe taking milestones near year end and actually not entering them until early in April. Absolutely, that is a strategy that people use. It's just but the dates have to be reasonable or not dated, and maybe that's something that would apply more in later March than in later February.
Yeah. If there are things going to be done at the end of March, there are times where we were like, is this learner going to carry over? Then, postpone that milestone until the new fiscal year. So it is, again, ingrained with the teachers that they realize March and April are key months, and to look at, how the student is progressing, where they are at within their ongoing training plan, and strategize with the learner and, you know, which benefits us as CAMS data people.
It also hasn't been a huge, we've been pretty good with it, and we haven't had to kind of strategize around that, just because a lot of students in post-secondary, like in the colleges, a lot of them tend to progress and finish in December, in I think it's April, and then again in August. We get a lot of people who are finishing, because a lot of people are going into post-secondary after our program.
That's right.
So because of that, we get a lot, I find we always get a lot of milestones in those particular months. So those people that you may not get at April 1st, you might get a bunch of them by the end of April, because they're going into a spring, summer semester program. So that's where, and with our program, with our milestones, the way we have them set up is that a lot of times for when a student completes a level, they're going to do a milestone automatically when they leave. That's just the way the milestones are rolled out in our program.
Yeah.
So for us, it's not, being in a post-secondary setting, we have a lot easier strategizing with that. It's not as hard for us.
I guess the last, this is the last page, or second last page of your DSQ. And again, just noticing on a monthly basis how we're doing as an overall service quality standard. And again, that takes into consideration all of the different core measures that we have to organize. And again, looking at progress, looking at suitability, and strategizing on how to, if we can manage different strategies between now and well, monthly, basically. We're taking a look at it monthly. And also we look at the amount of students we're serving within the month on a monthly basis too. On another spreadsheet that we use that we pull some of this data plus report 61, look at it on a monthly basis and try and again figure out where we're at. Even being able to utilize those monthly data, monthly DSQs to give an overall picture of a year on a yearly basis, so we can strategize even how busy we're going to be, how many new students we got in September. Do we need to organize new sections and stuff like that? But that's not CAMS data, but it is a useful tool for not just CAMS, but for overall program use too. We're trying to use the data that's coming out of CAMS to help us out with the overall program stuff too. And I think that's it. I'm just gonna click away here. Oh, I'll go back.
Yeah, you have a comment by Lori Graham from Cambria. Would be great to have a session on strategies for service coordination and what other sites do to build this number up.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Lori. That's one thing I think in our meetings since COVID and the pandemic, that's an area we haven't really touched on. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things. And service coordination has kind of fallen a little bit below the radar because of other priorities for discussions and for strategizing. But I agree, Lori, that's something that we could have a longer discussion about. Maybe we can devote one of our virtual services meetings in the near future to talking about service coordination. Just like today, we focused mostly on follow-ups. So I'm going to write that down on my virtual services note page here so that we can look at doing one on service coordination coming up.
Yeah, I'm sure that most other sites have found. I know that my personal views on how work has gone has been keeping up with CAMS has been, it's been there. However, the priority has been trying to serve our students, and going from an in-person paper-based program to doing this online electronically has taken a huge amount of time and effort that we haven't, it's got to come from somewhere. So unfortunately, the CAMS work, we are behind in some things. We've tried our best to keep up, but I'm sure all the schools are finding the same, that the CAMS work kind of took a bit of a back burner for a while because of what the student needed.
Exactly. I'm just going to go back to our discussion, not to hammer this into the ground, but just our culminating task discussion. I threw out a couple of numbers, 16% and 11% from previous years. So I just during this last few minutes went into CAMS and got the provincial roll-up reports for both last year and then this year to date. And so this is provincially across all LBS programs, not just colleges. So in the 1920 fiscal year, ending March 31st of 20, 13% of learners had done a culminating task. So that's across all 317 LBS sites in the province.
Oh, wow.
And this year, to the end of January, 7% across the whole province have done a culminating task or successfully completed one. So that's the provincial numbers right now.
And those numbers could just be a case of people not having the time to do the data entry to get the numbers in on time.
No, it's because people don't like them. They don't want to do them. No.
I just say it has nothing to do with the data entry.
No.
Oh, that's honesty is so nice.
Yeah. You know, Twyla, we were talking about all the problems that follow-ups are fraught with, and there's an equally fulsome discussion we could have about all of the problems with culminating tasks.
Yeah, I'm fortunate that I haven't had the joy of culminating tests to date. So thank you, Brenda, for.
Oh, it's not me. It's the faculty went, no way, 3 hours, forget it. No one's going to do that. Yeah.
Oh, gotta love it.
So I do see a few people are leaving, heading out now because it's getting close to 4. So if you're on your way out, thank you so much for attending. And of course, I just want to give a huge thanks again to Brenda and Twyla for leading the discussion today and screen sharing and walking us through this. There's lots of great comments in the chat about how much people have benefited from this, as with your previous session, Brenda and Twyla. And we got a couple of ideas for new follow-up sessions, around, say, reporting, a couple of those reports, and around service coordination. So that's also a really helpful outcome of these sessions too. And I like your brain image, Brenda.
Thank you.
Because we often talk about sharing a brain in this business.
Yep.
So definitely. That's a good way to look at it. So thank you so much, Brenda and Twyla. Thanks everyone for attending and taking the time out today to be here and contribute your thoughts and always good questions.
Yes.
So have a super good rest of the day and week. And next week's session is OALCF Part 1, the 25th. And
Awesome.
That'll just be a refresher for those of you who want to attend, or if you weren't around in the original OALCF training and you'd like to hear a little bit more about it, you could attend as well. So thanks again.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.